It is the preseason watch list. And Bloom, most importantly, it is a Broncos show.
Yeah.
Here we go. I'm still mad at the Broncos because, see, they got my old headshot.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have a new headshot. Give me my new headshot in there. Anyway, it is time for the Broncos show, the preseason watch list. 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. And I cannot wait to talk about, yes, Joe Flacco and company. We'll get to the weapons around him, but Joe Flacco, what does he have left? What does he have left in the tank? Is Joe elite? Like, no, and maybe not much. And it's a Rich Scangarello offense, Bloom, so he's going to throw like 20 to 25 touchdowns. That's what he's going to do. It's not going to be that much. This team isn't going to be built to fill the air with footballs. The defense is going to help out on that. They won't have to play a lot of comeback football. They won't have to play a lot of catch-up football because of that elite level defense. Some changes to the offensive line. Dalton Reisner, who is the smartest offensive lineman on the field for the Broncos, already, having a great influence on Garrett Bowles. Now, I don't think Garrett Bowles is going to work out, be this franchise left tackle, but he's certainly listening to Mike Munchak. Hello, Mike Munchak, people. So this gives you, some positive feelings about what they can do. Connor McGovern sells a low snap every day, so that's a concern there. But as far as Joe Flacco and just starting there, we got plenty to say with Drew Lock and everybody. But I'm not recommending Flacco for anybody, even as a backup quarterback. No, you've got plenty of other options. This is the year to wait on QB. I have some intel, by the way, Bloom, on one of your favorites you may not like. But anyway, that's off the air conversation. Totally off the air. But with Flacco, I'll pass.
Yeah, Flacco as a fantasy commodity is something we're not interested in. And even super flex 2 quarterback leagues, he's depth. But as you were outlining, Cease, I think Rich Scangarello is some sort of upgrade from what they had in terms of offensive coordinating. Mike Munchak is a massive upgrade in terms of offensive line coaching and offensive line personnel. You got Juwan James also. So there's some good new personnel on that offensive line. And Joe Flacco is better than what they had in the last few years. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, he's better than Trevor Siemian. He's better than Case Keenum. And as someone around the team, let's just say that, told me, because I asked, why didn't they use Philip Lindsay more as a receiver? I was told Case couldn't see him.
Yeah, well.
So there you go. Flacco's tall.
He'll see them, yeah. So we have these incremental improvements. It's not going to turn Denver into a top half of the league offense, but they're not going to be one of the most boring offenses or as boring as they've been. So I think that's the bottom line here. And see, in the spirit of a transition, I think that while we look at other quarterbacks as potentially in danger of being overtaken by the younger quarterback, I would say that Drew Lock is no threat to overtake Joe Flacco this year.
No, not at all. And the thing with Drew Lock, as we transition away from that, by the way, Flacco looks fine. Flacco looks like fine. Flacco.
Yeah.
He doesn't pay attention to the rush. All his motions are the same. That's good. His drops are all the same. That's positive. Everything's repeatable with Joe Flacco. There's not going to be much there. Now with Drew Lock, there is a ton there in terms of tools. Now he's got the big arm. He can fall backwards 70 feet on a rope, throw off his back foot. Drew Lock can do all those things. He's more athletic than you think. He is a hard worker. He cares a lot. He wants to be great. But man alive, his skill as a passer needs work because his footwork is inconsistent. His release point, he's very proud of his release point because he can sidearm passes like Pat Mahomes, but he does it when he doesn't have to. If a defensive end is in your face and you can sidearm around him and complete the pass, cool. That's awesome. That's a great skill to have. And Drew Lock does have that. But he'll have a clean pocket and just for no reason drop his arm and throw. And that is maddening. It's frustrating, certainly, with Drew Lock and Washington play. You saw it in the Hall of Fame game. You saw that he didn't really, put up the greatest numbers. He had a deep pass to Khalfani Muhammad on a wheel route that he just threw on a rope, just put a little bit of air under it. That's like a, 50-yard touchdown, whatever. Another big one to Noah Fant that was off Fant's hands. Fant, we'll get to his issues in a little bit. But with Drew Lock, and it's safe. And Flacco's a mentor. Flacco's coached up Lock. He has no problem doing that. Ton of BS last year, Bloom. I have it on very good authority from the Ravens staff. I won't even say around a billion. I'll just tell you who it was. From the Ravens staff, that Joe Flacco was a good teammate. That Joe Flacco had no problem with Lamar Jackson and giving him some tips or whatever. It's just Lamar Jackson was so different from what he is and what he does. Locke is more similar to Flacco, more athletic, certainly, but still the big arm, the pocket passer, and Flacco has taken his time to mentor Drew Lock. But he's zero threat to Joe Flacco this year.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good thing, honestly, if you're investing in this offense, because if we do see Locke, then the bottom drops out. And I guess our preseason watch list story here is, can Brett Rippon outplay Drew Lock and start the sort of RG3 Cousins narrative on its way?
No. I'll be very nice. Like Brett Rippon is a good kid, hard worker, blah, blah, blah. And I know from the Hall of Fame game, there's been people like, I told you he's better than Locke. No, he's not. Please, let's stop with this. Like, Brett Rippon's okay. Brett Rippon has a pretty weak arm. If you try to get him to throw like 25-yard outs, skinny posts, whatever, like it flutters, takes a while to get there. Locke is the one, if you have patience with, you could get something from. I think Brett Rippon, at the end of the day, the greatest guy ever. Either he doesn't make the team, makes the practice squad, or he's one of these, Kellen Moore type, stick around forever. Now, he's in a great system, so if you want to say Nick Mullins, Bloom, I guess say Nick Mullins.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And in the background here is what Rich Scangarello learned from Kyle Shanahan. And I think when Scangarello was an offensive coordinator on the college level, he really did try to install the Kyle Shanahan offense. So I think that is what we will see. And that's an offense, going back to Kyle's dad, that can prop up Ryan Greasy, Jake Plummer, can get the most out of limited quarterbacks.
Right. Kevin Hogan's there, by the way, as we gloss over him, Bloom. He's the backup.
Yeah.
Most likely.
That's what he's there for us to gloss over him.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's not gloss over the running back position, because this has become more complicated. We don't start with the Broncos. Usually we end with them, but we're going alphabetical this year. But anyway, good thing we didn't start with them, because things are different now with Theo Riddick. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the truth on Philip Lindsay, and we've got the chat room reacting. BGC saying, is Broncos defense a good target? Yes, and yes, because the turnovers they're going to get, field flipping plays they're going to get from the likes of Kareem Jackson, who I think is their enforcer, their tone setter defensively, and the defense is going to play into the ground game. That's how you're going to try to win with these Denver Broncos, is the rushing attack. Now, here's how it was going to work out, Bloom. Now, here's how it could work out. It was going to work out that Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay were basically in a 50-50 committee, where Royce Freeman would get more carries, Philip Lindsay would get more receptions, and a little fewer carries. Let's say if Royce Freeman had 1,100 yards rushing, Philip Lindsay would have 800 yards rushing. But Royce Freeman would have 200 yards receiving, while Philip Lindsay had 500 yards receiving. Everybody confused? I hope not. But that has all now changed with the addition of Theo Riddick, who already getting first-team reps, like steps right in. His pass pro was a little bit off the other day. But anyway, like now with Theo Riddick in this backfield, this went from like, and plenty of people are like, I'm keeping Lindsay. I'm not. I was one of those people saying, hey, don't forget about Royce Freeman. Look at where Royce Freeman's going. I like getting Royce Freeman. That still stands, because his role was never going to be the pass catcher, although he's a little better than people think. But now with Theo Riddick in, I think this really crushes what Philip Lindsay could do, as a receiver out of the backfield. And Riddick is a better receiver out of the backfield than Philip Lindsay. But now, how should Fantasy Jams approach this situation, Bloom? Because it has the makings of a two-headed hot hand committee carrying the ball, and then Theo Riddick getting the receptions.
Right. This is an avoid. I mean, it's a three-man backfield, and in no scenario outside of an injury to one of the three is it going to be anything less than that. They gave Theo Riddick money that shows they have a distinct role for him. He was not just brought in to be a camp body or to see if he can make the team. Well, they give him seats like $1 million guaranteed.
Yes.
He's going to play a role in the offense. And like we talked about earlier in the preseason, there was talk that Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay were going to do more receiving, and Devontae Booker maybe would be on the way out. Well, the Devontae Booker on the way out part was correct, but it was for Theo Riddick. And when you have a backfield, again, this is going to be a better offense than the last few years, but not a good offense, not one of the most productive offenses in the league. So if you split that backfield three ways, even if we split it 45-45-10, short of a Royce Freeman or Philip Lindsay injury that sidelines them for multiple weeks, there's not going to be much here to be had. Even in the best matchups, even with the defense setting up short fields and things like that, you can play Royce Freeman as a matchup play if he's going to be the consistent short yardage back. You can play Philip Lindsay as a what the heck flex, and obviously a very optimistic what the heck flex because he can still break off those chunk plays, and hopefully any worries about him wearing down because of his size and things like that can be allayed with this 3-man backfield. But I think
I love that you used allayed.
Yeah.
Allayed.
Yeah. Well, we
assuaged.
This is a great show also. See, our audience is the best because there are a lot of times I think I'm using words, my brain just cues things up and I'm not filtering it. And never once has anybody said anything about the way that we can dance around our vocabularies. But there's nothing in my vocabulary, Cease, that's going to convince people to spend a pick on a Denver back at ADP. I'm thinking upside. And, Lindsay's still probably a little more in reputation and numbers going higher than he should. Freeman could be a good matchup play running back and defense, like we talked about in DFS. So, in those kinds of weeks, I like Freeman, but I'm not drafting him for the 5-6 weeks that I'm really excited to play him. And Riddick is just there to ruin things. So it could make this offense better, it could make the offense more efficient, more long drives, can make them more of a winning team, but not make your fantasy team more of a winning team.
Right, and that's what we're talking about here. Now, I don't know what we should call it, Bloom, but maybe like heartbroken fantasy GM. Like, we have to get rid of the, he burned me last year. Because anytime I've talked positively about Royce Freeman, I get a lot of he burned me last year. Are you playing last year?
Right.
Are you replaying last year? Or are you going off the current information that they're using a wide zone scheme and that Royce Freeman looks perfect in a wide zone scheme? Philip Lindsay can run in most any scheme, but a wide zone scheme really helps Royce Freeman. And it's unfortunate that they're in this situation, Bloom, because Freeman could be your lone bell cow. As excited as we are about Kerryon Johnson doing everything in Detroit, that could be the way we are about Royce Freeman, but he's got Lindsay and Riddick there to deal with as well.
Yeah, and one of the things we can keep in mind at this time of year is when ADP last year, look, the fantasy football hive mind has some collective intelligence that we can harness. And ADP in some ways gives us a picture of the conventional wisdom on a player. See, where was Royce Freeman going right before drafts last year? 4th round?
Yeah.
And he was going very high. And this year, he's going to be 8th, 9th round and probably have more value than he had last year, but everybody was collectively underestimating Philip Lindsay. So it's really difficult to think, Freeman's so much cheaper. Now you buy in because a lot of that was based on information that we weren't really bringing to bear when we were drafting. And now I think this addition of Riddick is something that will maybe be absorbed as people start to think about it. But I think, again, the best thing here is avoid, even though it could be a much better, more successful season overall for the Broncos offense.
I'll give you a 4th back in this backfield because we don't usually talk about fullbacks, but look at the way Kyle Juszczyk was used by the 49ers, playing 665 snaps last year. And then look at Andy Janovich, who's played 230 some snaps last year. Andy Janovich is probably going to play 350 for snaps. And Andy Janovich might get you, 20 receptions this year. Well, that's just more touches away from Philip Lindsay. You know what I mean? So now they got Riddick in to catch 50 passes. You've got the fullback who's going to catch more passes just because of the design of the offense. So, Lindsay and his 35 grabs from last year, it's like, what's he going to get, 20 this year? It's just completely different now with Theo Riddick. The backups, I'm pretty sure Booker's gone. I'm not going to, I think maybe part of the reason why they add Theo Riddick is because they don't believe in their slot receiver. More on that in a little bit. But Booker's still there. Maybe he latches on somewhere else, Bloom, right? Tampa. We always say Tampa.
Right.
And he's got excellent hands. Biggest back, big back, maybe, has some stuff to learn. I'm trying to be nice here, but he definitely has excellent hands. Khalfani Muhammad, good inside out runner, probably not going to make the team. Devontae Jackson, one of my favorite rookie running backs, very quick, explosive. Probably not going to make the team. Practice squad guys, super deep dynasty. David Williams is there, but he won't make the team either, and not worth a deep dynasty stash either.
Yeah, and we're looking at the practice squad watch when we're looking past the top 3. Unlike the wide receiver seats, where maybe the not quite Philip Lindsay impact, but Colorado unheralded player can make an impact. That and more in the wide receivers.
Yeah, what a segue. Emmanuel Sanders and Cortland Sutton got into a fist fight yesterday. They talked today in a pair. They're like, oh, we love each other. And, man, I grew up idolizing this guy and all that. So it's been smoothed over, but basically Emmanuel was a little chippy because Sutton is,
An alpha?
kind of emerging. Yes.
Yeah.
And Sutton is maybe strutting his stuff. And Sanders is more of you haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
And Sanders is right. Honestly, we can all get excited about Cortland Sutton as their number one wide receiver for the Broncos. Make no mistake, he is. That's not a question. Emmanuel Sanders is the number 2. That's not a question. And it's a changing of the guard thing. Sanders doesn't want to quite let go. I've talked to E plenty. Like, he wants to play 3-4 more years, get another contract, get into the ring. That's fine. Probably not going to be with Denver. And then Sutton is just, he's ready. Early camp jitters aside, now Sutton out there dominating, winning at the catch point, running better routes. He's ready to be that number 1. But Bloom, again, kind of the shadow over this whole thing, like the number 1 in a run-heavy offense.
Well, and look, if I'm taking a Broncos receiver, I probably am taking Sanders because his ADP is a little more depressed coming off of the Achilles. And see, I can play host and I can ask you questions as the Broncos expert. All of this positive reporting about Sanders, you got to watch him year after year after year. Does he look different than he's looked in previous years?
He might look better than ever.
Yeah. So Sanders is going to continue to be a steady part of this offense. Now, Sutton might make some splash plays downfield, but we also saw Sutton when he had an audition as a number 1 last year, not really rise to the occasion. The other thing I think looming here is we can look at Joe Flacco and his history. Going back, Cease, to his rookie year in Baltimore, and in his first year with veteran receivers, whether it was Derek Mason, Anquan Bolden, Steve Smith, Mike Wallace, last year for half a season, John Brown. So this whole idea that, well, you got to establish that chemistry, takes a while to ramp that up. He looks to his reliable route runner. He looks to, because what do these guys all have in common? I mean, you see a type here: John Brown, Steve Smith, Derek Mason, Mike Wallace had a 1,000-yard season in his first year with Flacco. I mean, he's going to look to the technician. He's going to look to the guy who is a professional, and that's not Cortland Sutton's game yet. Cortland Sutton has that game where he can dominate, can bully you at the catch point, but that's not necessarily the kind of receiver that Flacco has flourished with. And I think when the bullets are flying, 3rd down and 7, he's going to be thinking Sanders. Sanders is the guy that's going to be on time. Sanders is the guy that's going to create separation. Sanders is the guy that has year after year after year in these situations producing. So I'll take Sanders at a discount over the aspirational pick of Sutton. But as we've been talking about, really in the Denver offense, the answer is probably none of the above.
I know who Drew Lock's favorite target is. Do you know who Joe Flacco's favorite target is? The open guy.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, Flacco is so milquetoast or by the book or whatever you want to say. Like, he will drop back. He will make a full field read. And if it just happens to be that the dump off is the best throw, he'll make that throw. He doesn't care. He doesn't force the ball. Lock forces the ball a lot. It's a good and a bad thing. But anyway, so Sanders and Sutton, that's how you approach that. The third receiver, now Bloom, I haven't looked this up. Okay. But I'm going to put you on the spot because off the top of my head, I can't remember who the Texans' third receiver was behind Andre Johnson and Kevin Walter. Like, who even was the third receiver? Like, and again, this is a Gary Kubiak system.
Right.
This is a Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan. Everybody knows the system. It's West Coast. This is what it is. Who in the hell was the third receiver? Bloom, I'll take it one step further. Even with the Broncos back in the day when they were winning Super Bowls with Elway, who was the third receiver? Like Willie Green? Like, seriously, you had Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey, and the third receiver was some slappy. Like, okay, like, yeah, it's the third receiver. The third receiver is actually the tight end. We'll get to that later and why they're going to force it to be Noah Fant. Anyway, like, Deshaun Hamilton's been hurt most of this camp. Deshaun Hamilton's Vincent Brown, right? Very good route runner, good kid. Love Deshaun, very smart. He's got just enough juice, Bloom. Just enough juice. If he gets the slightest injury, like, it's just his game's done. He can't perform. Speaking of opportunity, he had an opportunity last year playing with injury when Sanders was hurt and Demaryius Thomas was traded away. Hamilton had the opportunity that Sutton did. He didn't do squat either. So not as excited about Hamilton. Very excited about Juwan Winfrey. And the best way I can put it is this. If Hamilton doesn't stay healthy or doesn't get it, Winfrey already does. If Cortland Sutton doesn't get it, and I mean number 1 wide receiver get it, and Juwan Winfrey stays healthy, he already does. Winfrey's playing with the savvy of a 10-year vet out there, making difficult grabs, diving all over the place, low catch, high catch, route run out the catch, everything. Why didn't see you use him? Why did he get kicked off Maryland? Well, it was weed, multiple infractions, whatever. Okay, now he's here in Colorado. That's not a problem. And also, by the way, Winfrey needed to stay healthy. That's why they didn't use him much at CU. And, well, McIntyre had different ideas about, senior. I got to use Bryce Bobo. I got to use Devin Ross. Why am I going to use this guy? He's so talented. Like, Juwan Winfrey is the shut your mouth. Sorry, Joe. So let's talk about Hamilton and Winfrey here, because I think that's the conversation.
Well, Hamilton is a short intermediate guy, route running. So he could get a lot of cheap targets to move the ball, move the chains. If he's successful, he had that hamstring. He's over it now, so he needs to restore himself. But Winfrey's the guy. I'll make it really simple. When Chris Harris talks about a young receiver, I'm listening. And when Chris Harris says he's strong, he's got it, I'm listening. And, since we haven't even really brought Tim Patrick into the picture, because Tim Patrick is another one, unheralded, couldn't stay healthy, but had some really good days at Utah against some corners who play in the NFL now. But there were times that we saw Patrick making plays last year where you thought, oh, there's Sutton making one of those plays, big receiver, winning the air. Oh, no, it was Patrick. So I think that you bring up for dynasty players some really interesting possibilities here, both in terms of the number 3 receiver this year and the number 1 receiver long term, because Chris Harris has seen a lot at the cornerback position. And when something stands out to him in a young receiver, I'm taking note.
Yeah, I love Timmy Pats. I would say he's just been a little bit inconsistent in terms of separation. So we'll continue to watch him deep dynasty. Let's talk about Trinity Benson, who's a favorite target. Kelvin McKnight, they really like. And Kelvin McKnight could actually make the 53-man roster because they're looking for a return man. Anybody. This is why if you're Brendan Langley, you had your chance, man. And he might have just dropped his whole chance in the Hall of Fame game. River Craycraft's there, little slot guy. Nick Williams is there. And actually, Nick Williams just picked up and a couple of weeks ago, and he could make the team. Him or McKnight. McKnight's more exciting after the catch. Nick Williams is your classic slot guy, but he's a safe return option. So they're looking for returners here. I know Stephen Dunbar's still here, Fred Brown's still here, but it's really Trinity Benson, who they like, Kelvin McKnight, who they like, and then Nick Williams, who might make the team just because he's safe as a returner.
Yeah, and see, you're monitoring this, and I think the main thing is that there's an actual battle for roster spots, and I think that watching the preseason becomes more intense. It makes the preseason DFS angles or evaluating Drew Lock more interesting because there is something important on the line.
There is, as always, and it is a Bronco show, Joe Everett saying in the chat room. If it's official, this is a Bronco show. Yes, we can say it this time, and we're not just being kitschy, because it is. And we'll talk about Noah Fant. Bloom, I want to frame this properly, and I'll give us some background here. I'll give you guys some insight, some radio insight. There's a competitor, we could talk about ratings if you want to, but let's just say this. There's people out there that say I'm a shock jock when I talk about Noah Fant kind of disappointing after 2 weeks, day 14 today of training camp. And I go, well, no, I'm not a shock jock. I'm just telling you my observations. And I will say these are my observations of Noah Fant. He needs to work harder. One, he's out of shape. And it's the altitude, right? Theo Riddick, the first day, he was like, my God, how do you guys do this? And we're like, no, I'm just here, right? So Noah Fant, he's had plenty of time to acclimate to the altitude. He, doesn't, in 2 days, he was called out. In 2 out of the first 3 days of training camp, he was called out by Sanders for not finishing plays. He was called out by Cortland Sutton for not finishing plays. So, okay, that started things off. Those are the first 3 days of training camp. Since then, I've seen a couple of passes that were just like a little bit out in front of him, and he didn't just go Winfrey's everywhere. Winfrey's diving, Winfrey's skying, Winfrey's going over the middle. Winfrey's everywhere, catching everything and going all out. When Winfrey drops a pass, he's pissed. Noah Fant, there's been at least 2 instances, one down the sideline where he wasn't going to get hit, over the middle, guy alligator arms it, okay, whatever, practice, whatever. But there was one down the left sideline, was right in front of Noah Fant. He didn't even really have to dive for it, and he just it wasn't right here, so he didn't get it. it was like right here instead. I know people can't really see my hands, but like it's frustrating because the blocking is there, the size is there, the speed is there, the mismatches are there, everything's there with Noah Fant. I want the effort to be more there. Now, one preseason game in the books, they target him like 5 times. He's going to be the guy. They want him to be the guy. And I was talking to Orlando Franklin about this today, Bloom. Like, it was, friends of Willis McGahee. Remember the way Willis McGahee ran? It was like, why isn't he running hard? And he was running by everybody. Like, is that what I'm seeing with Noah Fant? I really want to watch this. I really want it because Fant's got everything. I just want to see him try a little bit harder. You know what I mean? And again, this is the honest truth about Noah Fant. It's not shock jock. It's just honest observations of what he's doing compared to what other rookies are doing when they're going all out to make a play. Fant's not doing that yet.
And I think that this fits on that Jared Cook comparison more than, say, Evan Ingram, when we're looking at these ultra athletic tight end pass catchers in the NFL. That Fant shows you sometimes what he can do, but you see he's not getting the most out of what he can do. And I think that's where, if you're going to go for an Iowa rookie tight end later, it's probably TJ Hawkinson, who's been getting almost opposite reviews. And I think the fact that they're using Fant so much early in the preseason is probably not a great sign in terms of, they're not putting him, in mothballs so that they can break him out in week 1. I think there's probably a similar dynamic to what you're describing. They want to see more. They want to see what if he can do in a game situation. So this is just not your late round tight end to target. And then as it stands, they have other tight ends fighting for roster spots. Some guys with decent receiving skill sets. If Fant is inconsistent, then they have some players that will at least be reliable to turn to.
It's almost like they're trying to jumpstart Fant.
Yeah.
That's what I thought in the game. And again, one preseason game, especially the Hall of Fame game, doesn't mean everything. It doesn't hardly mean anything. But the way there was like force feeding Fant, I don't see that in practice. You don't see Fant force fed like that. They got in the game, they're like, here. So just watch it. Know the talent is there. Kid's immensely talented. Let's see if it works out. Behind him, Jeff Hireman's the blocker. Troy Fumagali's got vacuum hands, effort blocker, not a great blocker, but an effort blocker. Fumagali's been making some plays, but he also has been hurt. Little hip thing, little whatever thing, and he's coming back from a sports hernia injury that cost him all of his rookie season. Austin Ford has been the most consistent tight end of the day. Almost every single day, he's the most consistent tight end. The undrafted former quarterback from Wyoming, backed up Josh Allen, Bloom. This is a guy that's been consistent there. And Jake Butt, I'll pour out some water, because it's just the knee, man. Like, if Jake Butt was healthy ever, in my opinion, he would have been up there with OJ Howard and Evan Ingram when he came out, but he wasn't healthy, and he hasn't stayed healthy, and he's only played 3 games in 2 years, and he's hurt again. Having knee soreness again may not make the team now.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And it's not, and this is one of those things where CCU as a practice observer, Fant should be able to really stand out in this group. And the fact that you have questions or reservations shows that, hey, it's his first camp, but he's not. This isn't the first chapter, the opening paragraph to the first chapter that says Fant's going to be an immediate sensation. And it may be a chapter, like you said, Fumagali's got the vacuum hands. Fort has been getting tons of positive. That's the thing. Imagine if we were hearing the same things about Fant that we're hearing about Fort, then we'd be excited. Not that we're excited about Fort, but we're excited about his chances to make the roster.
Yeah, and with Fant's skill set, you know what I mean? Fant's outstanding skill set. Bloom, we did it. As long as you don't take more than a minute and a half. We did the Broncos show in less than half an hour.
Yeah, and I think we had exactly 0 fantasy recommendations. Take 0 Broncos in your draft. It took us a half an hour to say.
Sanders,
kinda,
right? Sanders, kind of.
80 catches for 900 yards, maybe, and 5 touchdowns. I don't know.
Maybe. We'll still make every show a Broncos show. That is a wrap for the Denver Broncos and the preseason watch list. It's 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. The best team in the division, maybe the best team in football, especially with those defensive additions. Now, with the Kansas City Chiefs, what does Pat Mahomes do for an encore? That's next. All right, 3, 2, 1. Patty Ice, Potomac, Showtime, whatever you want to call him. Pat Mahomes is so much fun to watch. Just a great kid, hard worker, fantastic skill set, Bloom. But when you say 50 and 5,000 as a first-year starter, personally, I don't think he can best those numbers again. You know, I have history on my side, and usually you and I kind of go against this, Bloom, right?
Yeah.
When Odell Beckham Jr. has a great season and everyone's like, he can't do it again. You and I said, yeah, he can. So why do I feel different about Mahomes? Is it because only two other guys have reached the 50 touchdown plateau? Is it only because a small handful of quarterbacks throw for 5,000 yards? Is it with the defensive additions? Is it perhaps leaning more on the ground game and save it up or whatever? I mean, we don't have a Tyreek Hill suspension to worry about. So why is it? And maybe I'm trying to get you in my head truly on the couch, but do you share the same sentiment? Like, okay, Mahomes isn't going to get 5,050, but he'll get 4,845. Like, and that seems more proper in a way to me.
Well, I'll go counter to you on this. And I think probably part of the reason that you're being conservative is because, well, he so far surpassed anyone's expectations except for Matt Waldman's that it seems impossible for him to stay there. And I mean, you can chip away at some things and say, well, they lost their center, Mitch Morse, who's in Buffalo now. Hope he gets over that concussion. I'm not sure what else though, because so here's the thing, Cease. I'm going to make, and I'll unveil something that should be in the master plan, which coming out next week at Football Guys. I'm toying with a Kelsey Mahomes draft strategy. I'm toying with a draft strategy where you take Kelsey and Mahomes, because Mahomes lapped the field at quarterback last year, and Kelsey didn't quite lap the field at tight end, but I think that the gap will widen. But the first question you have to ask yourself is, based on what we know about Mahomes and his makeup, is he the kind of player who is going to coast on the success of his MVP first full year as a starter? Or is he a player who he's competing against himself? He's competing against an image of what he knows he can be inside of himself. I think B. I mean, I don't think he ever even could have did what he did last year unless he was that kind of player. So can he get better just in the progression of his career? I think the answer is yes. But then if we just look at objective things about this offense, Sammy Watkins healthy. You know, Sammy Watkins isn't on the veteran plan like Todd Gurley. He's healthy and he's lighting up camp. Mecole Hardman is electric. This is a guy that is going to give them maybe not quite exactly Tyreek Hill's pull away speed, but if in the next 10 players in the NFL for having that speed. Now, what are you going to do with two of those players to defend? Travis Kelce in the middle of the field. You also have, of course, Demarcus Robinson, maybe Byron Pringle. Byron Pringle is also, hey, Wendell, Byron Pringle is getting some things done in camp. Andy Reid saying good things about him. And let's face it, without Kareem Hunt, they have Damian Williams. We'll get to the running backs, but this could be an offense that runs through Patrick Mahomes even more, and they still have a defense that's going to get them into high-scoring games. So I actually think that Mahomes could surpass 5,050, and I think that he is going to have a meaningful gap between him and the next quarterback, whoever that is. Hopefully Deshaun Watson, because Kiki Cutie and Will Fuller stay healthy, and Watson himself stays healthy. But here's the thing, and this is circling all the way back around, Cease. The Mahomes-Kelsey draft strategy. If you can just get into the fantasy playoffs with Mahomes and Kelsey, you are going to have a material advantage over your opponents at two positions. And then at that point, it's just a question of you treading water at running back and wide receiver. But I would hate in the fantasy playoffs seeing a lineup of those two. It's a high-risk strategy, but this offense is primed for even more success than last year.
How do you feel about playing the waiver wire? I mean,
right. CJ Anderson would be your starting running back, or Damian Williams, whoever.
Right.
So that's the thing.
There you go.
We don't see a quarterback or tight end emerge during the season that is someone you can start in the fantasy playoffs and feel good about. We see that at running back. And then at wide receiver, there's a ton of guys from like the 5th to 9th round that could all be top 20 receivers. You just need to hit on a couple of them.
Right. Your season isn't over after the draft.
Yeah.
Like, keep playing, keep working the waiver wire, and keep listening to this show. And with Pat Mahomes, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see a repeat of 5,050 or him break Peyton Manning's record, 54-77. Like, go for it, dude. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how do you anticipate teams will go up against Pat Mahomes? Again, clenched sphincter. Sorry, Joe. I guess I got to say that. But yeah, the clinch factor is going to be high when you're playing Pat Mahomes. But do teams take the air out of the football? Do they try to, again, take a Broncos approach? We're just going to run the ball all day, play great defense. And I guess, in the division, we'll talk about a healthier Chargers defense. We'll talk about a Raiders defense that added improved weapons. We're talking about a Broncos defense that added Vic Fangio. So right there in 6 games, Bloom, I think Mahomes is facing better defenses than he did last year.
He is. And we saw last year, the Ravens frustrated him for a lot of the game. The Broncos frustrated him in both of the games. He still eventually got enough numbers. These were his floor games. But I think that what these teams did, Cease, is they didn't play it safe against him. They didn't try to. That's what would the Steelers do? Like, drop 8 into coverage. They're not going to do that. You're going to be aggressive. You're going to force him to play on his heels or have to react to what you're doing and get him out of his mindset and comfort zone instead of trying to say, well, let's keep it in front of us. Let's try to take these things away, because that's not going to work. That's just prolonging the death scene when maybe you can actually take him off his mark, make him sometimes exceed what even he's capable of when he's trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat.
I'll tell you what's not going to work. Chad Henne get any playing time.
No.
So I don't really want to talk about any debate. Maybe Kyle Shermer, super crazy deep dynasty. I like the idea of John Lovett as their Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
That's about it here, though, Bloom.
You got Chase Litton, Marshall, right? So yeah, I think that if Mahomes were to go down, obviously, that's one of those situations. Every time when we pause to talk about the backup quarterbacks, we say, what kind of shape would this offense be in if the quarterback goes down? Yeah. Ooh, bad.
Everyone hot about Damian Williams for good reason. We'll talk a little banged up, whatever's going on there with Damian Williams. Bloom, give us the latest. I've said it on the show since I heard it, that there's a member of that staff that's very excited to have Carlos Hyde. His name's Eric Bieniemy, by the way. Okay, everyone can be excited about Williams. That's cool. I'm still picking up Carlos Hyde late because I bet you dollars to donuts, Hyde will get some games. And again, remember, we're capturing windows. If I can capture a window with Carlos Hyde as the starter for 2 games, for 3 games, Bloom, whatever it is, and I capture that window because I spent a 14th round pick on Carlos Hyde, fine. I'm going to do that rather than take Damian Williams at his current ADP. That's just me.
Yeah.
How do you look at this?
Well, I think you can do glass half full, glass half empty on this. You can look at it either way. And I think the ADP reflects this, right? Because the situation has produced a solid to strong running back one, going back to the Alex Smith days, going back to Spencer Ware until he got that concussion. Spencer Ware was producing roughly at the same clip as 2017 Kareem Hunt, in the same neighborhood. And then, of course, Kareem Hunt was doing Kareem Hunt things last year before he was ushered out of town. And then Damian Williams was, and the thing is, if you watch Damian Williams, he was as effective. I don't want to say he was as explosive or exciting as Kareem Hunt, but he was as effective running the plays and being the execution of the reception, the red zone plays. He was doing his job, and the team's excited about him as the number 1 running back. So if Damian Williams plays 16 games, he'll be a top 10 running back. You can get that in the early 3rd round right now. But he's never done anything remotely like this in terms of workload. And the fact that he's already got a hamstring this early in camp is an issue. So the 3rd round reflects the risk there. When you can get guys like Devontae Freeman or Kerryon Johnson right after him, or really you're weighing Damian Williams against players like Keenan Allen or T.Y. Hilton, wide receiver, which feel like money in the bank as far as your weekly lineup. Or Damian Williams, if you were a little bit concerned about the idea, and I want to bring up Alex Collins. I feel terrible about Alex Collins because this was another one. This was last year's. Well, that situation is so good, and look at what he did in a partial year, but he's never done anything like that before. So this and Cecil in general in fantasy football, these are situations to fade. I mean, players to fade when we're betting more on the situation than the player, because there's not really much of a track record for the player and they don't have the pedigree either. So I understand people fading Damian Williams. And look, the other thing is you want to get pieces of this Kansas City offense. They're cheaper pieces or pieces that are maybe priced better for the risk factor and reward factor than Damian Williams. But I'll turn the page to the backups. And I think you're right about Carlos Hyde. And he's the backup for now, but they've got Darwin Thompson, Matt Waldman favorite, athletically gifted. They've got Darrell Williams, LSU backup behind all the great backs that
It's
they
like a
had there.
logging truck.
Yeah, right. So look, if we think it's the situation, we have to remember whoever it is, as long as they're competent, can harvest the value from the situation. And I think there was a note from the Athletic that said that Eric Bieniemy basically indicated that the preseason play is probably going to determine the depth chart after Damian Williams. But Damian Williams has to get back on the field, and this hamstring, he's still out, been out for a couple of weeks. That, as Dr. Gene always tells us, he counsels us, that first couple of practices back is big. And if Damian Williams comes back and aggravates that hamstring, then all bets are off. And we could easily see this running back situation turn over so quickly. If it's Carlos Hyde week 1, because Damian Williams can't go, and Carlos Hyde balls out because, well, and the question about Hyde is this: why did Cleveland sour on him so quickly? Why did Jacksonville give up a pick for him and move on so quickly? But it sounds like Andy Reid is not souring on him. Eric Bieniemy, as you said, a fan. But if Carlos Hyde goes out week 1 and balls out, then they may not go back to that plan of Damian Williams as our unquestioned starter. So there's some uncertainty here, and Williams has to rise to the occasion to allow them to follow through on their proclamations.
Going to be very interesting to watch in the preseason. I guess Darwin Thompson is that guy, Bloom.
Yeah.
He is the explosive playmaker, good vision, good footwork as well. And preseason watch list, I'll be watching him more than Marcus Marshall or Josh Caldwell.
Yeah, that's the guy that could really put his stamp on this backfield because of the juice that he has. And that's something that he may be able to match or even surpass what Carlos Hyde or Damian Williams could do at this point. He may be like that genie that you can't put back in the bottle.
Wide receivers, we go. Tyreek Hill out there, of course, doing his thing. A healthy Sammy Watkins. So let's just start with Tyreek the Freak and a healthy Sammy Watkins. I feel like now with more turbo, and now a healthy Sammy Watkins. What's that look like?
Yeah, and I suppose that the one potential negative here is that if Mecole Hardman is also playing a weekly role, then maybe a very large pie has to have another significant size slice out of it. And that, I think, is a little more of a concern for Tyreek Hill, just because I'm not sure what the percentage is. Someone smart like Scott Barrett or lots of smart people in the industry could run the numbers, but Tyreek Hill is a player that sees like half of his fantasy value came on 10 targets or something like that, right? Like his 10 longest passes are responsible for like half his value. Well, what if 2 or 3 of those plays now are Hill as the decoy and Hardman is on your, imagine that you're putting out there, well, you have to account for Kelsey. You have to account for Hill. You have to account for Watkins. I mean, see, very quickly, if you had Watkins, Hill, and Kelsey out there and Hardman, and you're the Broncos defense, who's covering Hardman?
Oof. Bryce Callahan, maybe?
Can Bryce Callahan run with Mecole Hardman? Can any team's third corner or fourth corner run with him?
Probably not.
No. And Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's going to know that. I mean, you're going to basically design plays so that you're isolating Hardman against someone that you know that he can outrun. And if 2 or 3 of those targets go to Hardman instead of Hill, where it was Hill getting all the deep targets when Mahomes would extend the play, when they're doing these design plays for Mahomes to basically outthrow the whole defense and Hill running under it, Hardman can do that too. And really, I'm bearing the lead here because the lead is now that we're hearing Hardman's running more of the route tree because Hardman's raw. Hardman wasn't even a wide receiver when he got to Georgia. So he's new to the position. So if he's starting to progress in his first camp enough for the Chiefs to say, hey, we see something here and we see progress in this first camp, maybe, Hardman is that guy that you at least keep on your bench and occasionally you put him in the good matchups when you look at that number 3 corner and you say, oh boy, this is going to be the matchup they're going to exploit over and over and over again. But so maybe that takes a little edge off of Hill as a second round pick. Watkins, on the other hand, looks very attractive as a 6th or 7th round pick right now, because we know that any week that Watkins is healthy, we're going to project him as a top 20 or 25 receiver just because of this offense, because of the targets he can get as, again, defenses, they're thinking about Kelsey in the middle of the field. They're thinking about Hill, and now they got to think about Hardman deep. Who's Watkins going to get? Watkins is going to get a matchup that he can win most plays. So, this is exciting. And Cecil, as I think about this, again, I'm going back and talking to myself even more. Everyone's going to wait on quarterback, and that's good. That's good. But Patrick Mahomes can make you look smart for not waiting on quarterback this year because his offense is going to get even better and more difficult to defend.
I'll never forget that Demarcus Robinson was Pat Mahomes' first favorite target.
Yeah.
Always good to know about that chemistry.
Mhm.
There's very interesting names. Marcus Kemp, you've already brought up Byron Pringle in the wide receivers behind our big three here, the big trio for the Chiefs. Who stands out for you among this list?
It's Pringle, and Pringle can run those deep routes. Pringle's getting praise from Andy Reid. He talked about how there was the Green Bay game in the preseason he got hurt during, but you saw, wow, this kid can do something. And now he said he's a strong player. He's having a good camp. I think he's going to make the team. And then you have Cody Thompson, who's also getting some praise. And Cody Thompson's kind of their Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson, Arizona. I got to not Keyshawn Johnson, Jets, but a good route runner, and not a guy with a lot of physical gifts, but a guy who's going to do what he's supposed to do precisely on time and play the game with some precision. And I think that Andy Reid likes that. So I think that those are the guys you're looking at. Marcus Robinson, has some experience in this offense. If there were to be an injury, he might be the first man up. Although I think that McCole Hardman's going to take snaps away from him. I mean, I think that while he's a functional player and can unlock some value, way back when, before Hardman was drafted, and when we thought Tyreek Hill was going to serve a suspension of some length this year, Robinson was a nice guy to stash away. Now he's looking at how many snaps, how many targets could he get this year in this offense.
He puts the E in Keyshawn Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you got to get that one. We need another E player for you.
Kiki QT, come on, man.
Did Kate really get you Kiki
Cutie socks? I've worn them on the show once. I'll bust them out again.
Okay. All right.
And many times. They're going to become a fixture.
Okay, let's do that. Let's Travis Kelce honestly really isn't that interesting to talk about.
Right.
He's going to dominate. He's going to be the best tight end, blah, blah, flippo.
Well, and the thing that I especially like here, Cease, is you go back and watch those Kansas City games last year. He and Mahomes have chemistry. Okay, there are plays. It's kind of like Roethlisberger. We're skipping ahead to the Oakland episode coming up in 2 episodes. He and Mahomes have that chemistry, that Roethlisberger-Brown chemistry, or the Rodgers-Adams chemistry, or the Watson-Hopkins chemistry, where he knows there are places that a quarterback would not prudently throw to, that Kelce's going to make that catch. Kelce's going to make that play, and he gives him chances to make that play. So that's really exciting. And again, when you think about Hardman and Hill pushing back the safeties, all that room for Kelce to operate. Oh, it's like watching the buffalo running through like Yellowstone Park or something,
It's beautiful. Just don't get too close. Blake Bell.
Exactly.
Blake Bell's the, and I'll always appreciate the former Sooners quarterback who's bounced around the league. Not really much to talk about.
Deion Yelder, Deion Yelder, they took a claim from the Saints, I think, special teams guy. I mean, if Travis Kelce were to go down, perish the thought. I think he's okay after having off-season ankle surgery. There could be some value just because a la Vance McDonald in the Steelers offense, when they had Juju and Bryant and Antonio Brown, like, who's going to cover? Why you just like, hey, if you're going to throw the tight end, go for it. So if it's one of those guys, the belldozer, then maybe that could be interesting. But yeah, I think that there's no Demetrius Harris here. James O'Shaughnessy's not walking through that door.
That is a wrap for the preseason watch list of the Kansas City Chiefs. 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. Why am I saying position today? Anyway, we have to talk about the Chargers. And as of this recording on August 6th, what if Melvin Gordon doesn't show up? That's next. 3, 2, 1. Let's get through Phillip Rivers and company here. The Chargers, Bloom, preseason watch list, Audible, footballguys.com, 32 teams, blah, blah, flippo. And Phillip Rivers with those weapons that he has to throw to. Now, the running back conversation is the most interesting. We're going to save that, but it's a year to wait on quarterback. Does wait on quarterback mean wait on quarterback and get Phillip Rivers?
No, and here's why. And this is no disrespect to Phillip Rivers, but the name of the game is upside. So wait at quarterback, but wait at quarterback for someone who can surpass that ADP and not just hold the line at 20 to 22 points a week. And one of the things I talked about with Simon Shepard, one of the great unsung heroes of football guys, on the couch this week was, what if we reconsider the quarterback position? And instead of thinking about that 18, 20 points that you can just get usually off of the waiver wire, or maybe 15 to 18, and there are these guys who are going to get you that 20 to 22 like Rivers. What if we look at the value of the quarterback is what you can produce over 20. So how many times can you put 30 or 35 point weeks up? That's where Josh Allen comes in, Mitchell Trubisky, even Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, so on and so forth. So I love Phillip Rivers. I love him as a player. He's set up for success this year. Most of the time, he's going to be hovering in that 20 to 25 point range. And I think that as the season goes on, in fantasy leagues, people are going to see that quarterback is so deep that if Rivers is your number 2 quarterback, then you're probably not going to carry him for that long, because you can see that you're not going to be punishing anybody, because there's going to be other quarterbacks on the waiver wire that you can get that are going to be roughly the same, in the same scoring range as Rivers. So it's much like Phillip Rivers. And the nice thing about Phillip Rivers is he maintains and sustains the value of the other players we're going to talk about in this offense. The value he has in his own, he could put up close to career numbers and still not really be a difference maker in this 2019 NFL.
A difference maker behind him, Tyrod Taylor, maybe. I don't know, bad transition, Bloom, but I'm interested in Easton Stick. Okay, and Easton has... imagine Carson Wentz as lesser as a passer and perhaps more as a runner. And again, as we look for everyone's Taysom Hill, Easton Stick might be their Taysom Hill.
Yeah, he's got the athleticism, the measurements. So that's very interesting. And then you have Tyrod Taylor, and behind a quarterback who never ever misses a game. There's probably going to be some teams, Cease, that could use a Ty. I mean, I would say, hey, if your starter goes down, you don't like your backup, it's before the trade deadline. Tyrod Taylor could be the guy that you want to keep your team sustainable.
Okay, we have to do this 2 ways, Bloom. We have to talk about as if Melvin Gordon's going to return, or as if Melvin Gordon is not. Now, I feel confident that he will. I don't know necessarily why I feel that confidence. I'll just say that's what I do. That before the regular season, Melvin Gordon will be out there with the Chargers. He will get a new deal. They're not that far apart in numbers. Lord knows I would love to be $2 or $3 million richer, but they're not really that far apart in terms of annual average salary. I think something gets done, but Bloom, we have to talk about both scenarios here.
So, what's nice is for those of you drafting before this gets resolved, it's really easy to take a stand on this with your draft, because Gordon's falling to the 3rd round. He's a late 1st round value. If none of this happened, if he had gotten an extension early in the offseason, he's a late 1st round value. So that's a win. Cease in those best ball tournament contests where you're trying to be alive in week 16. Melvin Gordon looks like a good player to take to put you in the top range of outcomes if he doesn't hold out. As far as actually gauging the holdout, it's really difficult because we're gauging the psychology of somebody that we don't know. I do think that because of the Le'Veon Bell situation, we're more sensitive to this as both as fantasy analysts and fantasy players, because we don't want to leave someone hanging. So we have to take this as a credible possibility. And I do actually think that the Le'Veon Bell situation makes it more credible, because see, we could go off into a tangent here, like a 20-minute argument about did Le'Veon Bell win or lose? I still think from the player perspective, I'm not saying this is correct. I'm saying from the perspective of the players, he won. He won because he didn't have to shed another drop of blood for a team that did not commit to him. Now, if Melvin Gordon has that mindset and they won't budge from their offer, and remember, the Steelers made Le'Veon Bell an offer. If Melvin Gordon feels like, I deserve David Johnson money, I deserve Le'Veon Bell money, and if you won't give me that, then I don't want to work for you anymore. I'm going to stay home, call in sick to work until you let me go work somewhere else. It's possible. There's even this talk about he has to come halfway through the season based on the precedent so that the Chargers can't just make him play this year of his contract out over again. But I also think the Le'Veon Bell situation introduces a precedent of a player poisoning the well, so the team just says, let's just move on. Now, the Chargers are a tighter organization than the Steelers and might just say, no, that's not going to work with us. No. We have a right to this. This is an asset that we have, and we're not just going to let it go. But I think that we're looking at the possibility of, like you were saying, Gordon shows up, and there's still, Gordon hasn't been able to stay healthy. This is why Gordon doesn't have as great of a negotiating position as he might think. 2 out of the last 3 years, he hasn't finished the season. And for fantasy football, that's important, fantasy playoffs. So that already gave you some hesitation. So I think if he comes into camp he comes into week 1, because this is the classic preseason risk, right, season. You could talk about this as someone who is a veteran. I mean, how many Broncos camps have you gone to now? Like 15, 16? I don't even know how many. How important is it for players? You used to say getting your body calloused, How important is that? Because there's still this thing, Melvin Gordon signs a contract on September 3rd. It's all good. Well, soft tissue injuries and things like that. But the bottom line is this: if you want to play the holdout 8 or more games, then you have Austin Eckler 7th round, Justin Jackson 12th round, and honestly, I think they'll have roughly the same value. Eckler may be a little better in PPR. That I think the easy call here is you take Jackson, and in fact, even if you take Gordon in the 3rd round, why not take Jackson? Because if Gordon shows up, you win. If Gordon doesn't show up, he might be able to, Justin Jackson, keep you afloat until Gordon comes back.
15 years of Broncos training camp.
Yeah.
You made me do math, Bloom. I don't like that. Well, let's talk about the guys behind Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson, including Dentrez Newsome, Tremaine Pope, and they got Derek Gore as a free agent this year too.
And Jeremy Cox, who has some really interesting measurables. And Dentrez Newsome made the team as the 3rd back last year. It'll be really interesting to watch this competition. And really quickly, by the way, on Eckler was actually a little better or as good when Gordon was playing in terms of his fantasy production as when Gordon wasn't playing, because he was making some big plays out of the backfield as a receiver. But I also think that Justin Jackson's emergence against our Steelers, I mean, you could say the name. I could be 85 years old and barely lucid, and you could say Justin Jackson. I was like, how did the Steelers lose that game? But they've got some interesting guys here, and I think that's looking at this team. If they can find a Justin Jackson in the 7th round, they can find a Jeremy Cox as a free agent that they really like. This again, the universe is unfortunately speaking to the Chargers and their teams and saying, running back maybe doesn't matter. So I think that's also informing their position of saying, we'll pay you this much, but not more.
John Kitten is the name for me because of the week 17 game on the way to Super Bowl 36, and they totally exposed the Steelers defense.
It's always it's a Broncos show, and it's an erotic Steelers fan show.
Welcome to the Audible, the footballguys.com podcast. We got to do these wide receivers because they're awesome. Big Mike Williams, Keenan Allen out there, the toughness, the quickness with the sickness, the big grabs over the head. Like these guys have it all in terms of each one with their different skill set, Allen being more of the technician. But man, you get excited about this passing game because of those two guys.
They lose Tyrell Williams, but they gain Hunter Henry when we're looking at this passing game. Also, by the way, in the background here, in some ways we're bearing the lead on the Chargers offense because Russell Okung, who, by the way, a player who did a tremendous job for himself negotiating his own contract. Richard Sherman did that too. Okung has a pulmonary embolism. It doesn't sound like he's going to practice during camp. He's going to return as soon as he's cleared to return. I don't know when that's going to be. And they have right tackle's a problem, Sam Tevy. And then after that, I mean, they have a undrafted free agent, Trent Scott. They have a 3rd round pick, Trey Pipkins, who played at Sioux Falls. See, so we ever talked about a player from Sioux Falls? Is it really a first?
What's their mascot?
I don't even know.
Because I want to say Sioux Falls Jackrabbits, baby, or whatever.
The Fightin' Sioux or something like that. I don't know. But so that's a problem. That's a problem. But otherwise, Keenan Allen is going to be a high floor receiver, maybe not as high a ceiling weekly or over the course of the years. Those guys go in the 1st round, 2nd round. That's why he's falling to the 3rd round, but you usually don't get a receiver the caliber of Allen in the 3rd round. And then Mike Williams fits into this massive tier from the 5th round to the 9th round or so of wide receivers who could easily surpass their ADP. For him, it's touchdowns. He's not going to be a high volume receiver, but if Melvin Gordon doesn't play for, say, the first 8 games, then you have Mike Williams as maybe one of your first options in the red zone.
Throw it up.
Yeah.
Throw it up. Let the big man go get it. Like, do more of that.
Yeah, like he did against Kansas City. And then another one of those, how do they win that game?
Right. Oof. All right, Chargers. And this one's going to be fun. Frank Schwab got people like emailing him because he picked the Chargers to win the division. It's like, it's probably going to be the Chiefs, but I could easily see the Chargers. Easily see them win the division. Like, that's not outrageous at all. No. Anyway, people love sending emails. I love talking about football with you, brother. So let's talk about Travis Benjamin, Jeremy Davis, Artavis Scott's still kicking around in this league. So some interesting names. Malachi Dupree, right? In this. preseason watch list.
So Travis Benjamin, and for those of you in those deep best ball leagues, he's a great late best ball pick because he's the number 3 receiver now without Tyrell Williams. Gone up the coast to Oakland, and he's a deep ball receiver. He's still got deep speed, and he's still going to be the guy that occasionally catches that 50-yard pass, sometimes for a touchdown. And then after that, it's Artavis Scott. And see, what do we need more of? Clemson receivers. He's not quite, you got the Clemson reunion here with him and Mike Williams, but he can do some things like run jet sweeps, run after catch. They like him a lot, and he's going to be the clear number 4 receiver here. He's going to be the guy that if there's an injury, he could get some playing time. He could plug into a productive role, and he's a guy that I'm really excited to watch in the preseason.
By the way, our man Joe Everett in the chat room says Sioux Falls mascot, the Cougars. Sioux Falls Cougars, baby.
Right. Not that kind of cougar, Cease.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Chargers tight ends, including Hunter Henry. Again, kind of one of those situations, Bloom. Just stay healthy.
Yeah.
We know he's good. Just stay healthy.
Yeah, that was one of the big, knock the wind out of you moments when we found out he tore his ACL in the offseason last year. He mixes in with a group of tight ends that starts with Evan Ingram and OJ Howard and ends around like Jared Cook, Vance McDonald. These are the guys that if you're not taking a top 3 tight end and you're not waiting at tight end, you're looking at somebody from this group that you think can be in the top 5. And Hunter Henry absolutely could because of Rivers, because of the red zone chemistry they had, and because he's a solid player. I mean, I think we shall see that he came in with Austin Hooper, right, in the same class. But I think and this is another one nation under Hog, right? This is a guy who absolutely, I think, adds more value to his targets than someone like Austin Hooper, especially in the red zone. But it's splitting hairs, Cease. Team hasn't ruled out Antonio Gates coming back. And they were kind of secretive about it. I think Tom Telesco was a little like, oh, I'm not really going to say much about that. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Antonio Gates one more ride. And I look forward to the afternoon that they induct him into Canton.
Gates much more likely to come back than Gronk.
Ooh, hot take, Cease.
Yeah, we'll see. It's because I don't like any of the backup tight ends.
Yeah, well, and I mean this they got Virgil Green, the blocker, Sean Culkin, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that Hunter Henry, they need look, Antonio Gates is just somebody that it's almost like a good luck charm for this team if they do finally make it to the Super Bowl, back to the Super Bowl. I mean, what the 49ers did to them. It would be sad if Antonio Gates wasn't there with them.
Don't go to a Super Bowl with a quarterback named Stanley. That's a wrap for the Chargers. In the preseason watch list, it is 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. One team left in the AFC West. It's the hated Oakland Raiders. Maybe you love them. Soon to be Las Vegas Raiders. And has John Gruden figured this thing out? That's next. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. It's time to talk about those Raiders, Bloom, because John Gruden, all those first-round picks, moving to Las Vegas. It's going to be much more exciting next year when we get to talk about that. It's going to be much more exciting next year, although Nashville did a great job with the draft. Vegas is going to probably top that. Everyone's sad or trouble. Anyway, let's talk about the Raiders and Derek Carr. We can't get away from Antonio Brown in the Derek Carr conversation. We can't really get away from Tyrell Williams in the Derek Carr conversation. Bloom, we can't really get rid of Josh Jacobs in the Derek Carr situation. This is a new look Raiders offense. What does it look like for Derek Carr?
Well, we've never made fun of John Gruden's offenses or offensive prowess as a coach. The offensive line, they get Trent Brown in. They spend a lot of money on him. They trade Kelechi Osemele, and they bring in Richie Incognito. I mean, only John Gruden can bring back Richie Incognito just a footnote. It shouldn't have been a footnote, but there you have it. And then we'll see about Colt Miller, their first round pick last year. The offensive line should be fine. Obviously adding Antonio Brown to this offense helps a lot. And there was a point last year that he was the ghost of Jordy Nelson and Marcel Aitman and Jared Cook. And that's one of the things we'll see. Like, how much was Jared Cook just a target by necessity? But look, Derek Carr, while he might support some values here, I don't think he's going to make overachievers. Who did he make an overachiever last year? Jalen Richard. dumping the ball off. I mean, that's what Derek Carr can do for you, is make ultra safe plays, very safe, very much coloring inside the lines. That's not that exciting to me. Even though John Gruden could schematically, using some of these new elements, they got Tyrell Williams. See about Darren Waller, Georgia Tech's high speed receiver turn tight end. I just don't see Derek Carr making overachievers. And I think the question becomes, by the end of the year, are we saying, is Derek Carr the long-term quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders? And also, by the way, they talked about, why doesn't the draft come down here to New Orleans, where I'm at? And it's because there's just no room on the calendar. We got a party every weekend. We can't fit another one in.
By the way, there was some thought. Am I going to get all up in Raiders feelings now, Bloom? Kyler Murray was pretty high on their draft board. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that. And then with all their first round picks, had they wanted to, they could have easily moved up for Kyler Murray. Be damn Cliff Kingsbury and everything, blah, blah, blah. There might have been something that kept them from doing that. I got to talk to you after the show.
Oh,
anyway.
And I got to say, since our brother was, by the way, the love of my life, now wife, thankfully, Kate's in the background holding up her Who Dat sign. So she's trying to turn this into a Saints show. It's not a Broncos show or a Steelers show.
Wow. Saints show. We've never done that before. Yeah. Let's try new things. Man, do I got to talk to you after the show. Anyway, let's talk about the Raiders backups or not, because it's Mike Glennon and Nathan Peterman.
Yeah, and may we not see them. I mean, Derek Carr, we saw, there was that season that Oakland was looking like they got it all back together. Reggie McKenzie. But then Derek Carr got hurt. So may he not get hurt, or we'll see some Mike Glennon or that Nathan Peterman. I really, John Gruden, even though we don't laugh at his offensive prowess, he gives us something to laugh at. This training camp, it was Nathan Peterman. He's pretty good.
Hey, still saying that.
Yeah.
There's some puff piece that I commented on like last week on the Newswire. So
yeah,
there we go. Not a puff piece when you talk about Josh Jacobs, their first round running back from Alabama. Certainly love what the guy can do as a runner, as a receiver out of the backfield. They insist he won't get everything, Bloom, but I kind of hope he does.
Well, this is one of the situations where, as these first depth charts come out and coaches say, don't put any stock in this, it doesn't matter. They want Jacobs to be the starter. They're not doing this, you have to earn it, we're putting you third or fifth, like Darrell Henderson on the depth chart. I think it's Josh Jacobs' job. He has a 3-down skill set. He's going to take that oomph that Jalen Richard gave, that cheap backdoor cover PPR play. He's going to get a lot of those PPR points now. Doug Martin is still there. Doug Martin could be a competent backup. Chris Warren not there. So the message, show up to camp in shape after you're rehabbing your injuries. But Josh Jacobs fits in that third round, fourth round running back tier of guys who have running back one upside. And Jacobs, I think, is below the Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, Leonard Fournette's, but he's still in that tier because we all remember what John Gruden did to Cadillac Williams as a rookie.
Yeah, ruined him in about a month.
Yeah.
How about give a guy 35 carries a game? Let's see how that works.
Yeah.
Oof, I just got my Cadillac Williams jersey too.
Oh,
anyway,
Auburn or Tampa?
Tampa. Mm-hmm. I had a Tampa Cadillac jersey and a Tampa Mike Allstott jersey.
Nice.
Yeah, really nice. I have a Tampa Eric Rett jersey too. Jalen Richard is someone that they insist will still be part of the offense. Bloom, do you buy that? Because when I think of Josh Jacobs, I think he's a better receiver than y'all think he is. Now they say, and Richard's a weapon in his own right, correct? I mean, yeah. Do you believe it when they say like, no, Jacobson we're still gonna use Richard? Like, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, he's got some chunk playability, and he's a pesky back out of the backfield to corral. But I think he'll play a lesser role than what we saw last year. So he's not that guy that you think about taking in your best ball leagues in PPR late because he's going to give you cheap 10 or 12, 14-point weeks like he did last year. Josh Jacobs getting his receiving chops and tutoring under the tutelage of Julio Jones.
Too much tooting. By the way, when you say corral, I think of Garth from Wayne's World. He's like, we're going to rope and ride Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
There
Extreme
you go.
Close-up.
Extreme close-up, indeed. Inside joke. Do you want to talk about DeAndre Washington or James Butler or Mac Brown?
I mean, whenever Chris Warren got cut, it helped the chances of DeAndre Washington to make the team. But, maybe he can get picked up by Cliff Kingsbury.
Perhaps. Another interesting take. Interesting And what Antonio Brown is going to do with his new team, with the new contract, new direction. Let's throw in Tyrell Williams in this situation as well. But really, the spotlight, the fantasy focus is going to be Antonio Brown and what he does with his new team, out to prove the Steelers wrong.
And I think that I wouldn't be wagering him doing that on my roster. It all comes down to Antonio Brown. And I know Antonio Brown was a perennial top 5 receiver with Ben Roethlisberger, but we can't quantify what he's going to lose by not playing with Ben Roethlisberger. But we know that he had as good of chemistry with his quarterback as any receiver had in the league. And one of the things that we can go back in our mind's eye and replay, how did Antonio Brown do it? It was Ben Roethlisberger making these low percentage, small window throws and trusting Antonio Brown to make the play. That's not Derek Carr's game. That's just not Derek Carr's game. So if Derek Carr is not going to be throwing in those, even when Antonio Brown's covered, he's not covered. If he's not giving him those chances, then how far does it fall? I don't know how far it falls, but unlike Hall of Famers like Calvin Johnson, future Hall of Famer, I guess, Randy Moss, who it really didn't matter who their quarterback was. It matters who Antonio Brown's quarterback is. I don't know how much it's going to matter, but now with this foot issue, and they said maybe frostbite from misusing a cryogenic chamber. I don't know if there's anything to that. Chris Sims is not the best source. Dr. Chow, speaking of Chargers, said that he thought it was like and Chris Sims said he got some sort of buck fungus on his feet when he was with Tampa. We can add that to the MRSA and whatever else they had.
Fungus?
That's what he called it. I'm not making that up. I don't know. Like they have their own foot fungus that's like named after the team. I don't know, man. But this is all going to take a wild left turn into like foot maladies. It's one of the things about getting old. Anyway, look, his feet, it's not going to be a problem. Like it's probably not going to keep him from playing, but that chemistry, the timing, that just being able to finish each other's sentences, that was Roethlisberger and Brown. He and Derek Carr haven't had a chance to build that up, and they're not going to now.
How does Carr handle Brown? Like, because Ben would always be Ben, right? And exactly. That's my point. Because Ben would always be Ben, right? Ben's a little... Oh, there's so many ways I could go.
Yeah, exactly.
Who do I want to piss off today, Bloom? Like, Ben don't give anything.
No.
Not anything, right?
No.
So when Brown's like, throw me the ball, and Ben's like, because Ben's Ben. I'll just save it.
He's tuned into radio Ben, and that's
Carr's not that guy.
No.
Carr might actually, it might be a huge negative for Carr.
Yeah, it could rattle him.
Antonio Brown's like, give me. It might be a huge negative for Carr, who's like, I gotta force feed him or else he's gonna yell at me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, it's funny, because we can turn the page on these receivers and say, well, Tyrell Williams, Phillip Rivers was good at throwing him on the open on this crossing routes, and Tyrell Williams made some nice plays as a deep receiver last year. Again, do I think Derek Carr deep ball? Vertical offense. No. It's Hunter Renfrow. It's actually Hunter Renfrow. And I'm not saying I'm going to draft Hunter Renfrow and Trey Quinn, your keys to winning your league in the 18th round. But, Hunter Renfrow could be like the Jalen Richard. Hunter Renfrow could be the guy at the end of every game, like 7 for 50 and maybe a touchdown, because he sees the slot receiver job. John Gruden loves him. John Gruden's like on John Gruden's all-time team. From now on, forever, John Gruden will say, I want Hunter Renfrow on my team. You let me pick from all the Hall of Famers, I'll still pick Hunter Renfrow. So Hunter Renfrow, yes, Hunter Renfrow is the receiver that intrigues me the most out of the Raiders, which just shows you how this passing game is not the most exciting.
Yeah, and Renfrow looked good at the Senior Bowl, so there's quarterback's best friend, right? That type of skill set. We'll talk about the players behind them. Some names some names you don't know, but maybe should. Keelan Doss, especially, Bloom. Keelan Doss, mwah!
Yeah. Just
practice squad him, whatever. Super crazy deep dynasty. Keelan Doss, mwah! Magnifique. Watch him. Now, we've got to talk about J.J. Nelson, Marcel Aitman, Ryan Grant's kicking around. Dwayne Harris is still there. Rico Gafford. Like Jordan Lastly. This is what John Gruden does. So let's talk about these, reserve wide receivers.
JJ Nelson's having a good camp. He may stick as a deep receiver. Marcel Aitman has that contested catch ability, got on the field last year. You might have to fight to make the team. Ryan Grant getting blown out of camp by Hunter Renfrow. Dwayne Harris can contribute on special teams. That might help him make the team. Keelan Doss is the guy that's interesting here. He's from a long term, as you said, more of a practice squad guy, but a technician, a more refined receiver, and I think someone who can stick. And then Jordan Lasley's interesting to watch because the Ravens spent a 5th round pick on him last year. Didn't even make it through a second camp, but Oakland claimed him. And unlike Dante Foreman, because with Dante Foreman getting claimed by Indy, that means he made it through all of the non-playoff teams. But Oakland claiming a team player, maybe for all we know, 10 teams put a claim in on Lashley. I have no idea, but at least it shows that a team that has some power in their claim decided to claim him. Let's see if he can rehabilitate his career in the preseason.
What kind of power they got at the tight end position? Seriously, because this is a team that's like, you're going to go cheap at tight end. Okay. Darren Waller there, Foster Moreau, rookie, good all-purpose guy, good blocker, not necessarily dynamic as a receiver, in my opinion. Decent at the Senior Bowl, too, by the way, like Renfro was. But there's just not much sticking out here. Maybe it goes back to Brown with the buck fungus.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say something else. Replacing the sorry, Joe. But buck fungus sounds like something bungus. Anyway.
Yeah. Mr. Bungle?
Mr. Bungle, Mr. Broccoli,
yeah.
Bloom. Do we have to talk about these tight ends? I guess
well, Darren Waller's interesting just because of he's a size speed wide receiver and he's playing tight end. And if you think about if defenses give Antonio Brown the respect he deserves, and they give Tyrell Williams some respect as a deep receiver, and you have the slot receiver and the slot corner, then Darren, it's Mr. Bungle. My head is just. I'm thinking of the story with the Mr. Bungle. Was it the bassist or guitarist with the bondage mask and the whiskey and the vomit coming out of the eye holes? Sorry. It's because we're at the end of this preseason watch list. We got to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
But Darren Waller's an upside tight end because he's got that big receiver skill set, and he's going to be one of the ones with a better matchup here. They seem excited about him. Foster Moreau, LSU, maybe some see, when we say LSU, we always say untapped potential as a receiver. We don't know how good he could be, so that's a guy to watch long term.
You have your Laramie Tunsil gas mask.
Exactly.
You want to go out in a bang or go up in smoke. I can see the base camp message from Joe now. Hey, buddy, can y'all stop talking about the marijuana? Thanks, buddy.
Right.
Yeah, we love you, Joe.
But buy the T-shirt.
Yes, buy the T-shirt. Make the T-shirt. The preseason watch list is wrapped up, buddy. Can you believe we got through again here? And now it's been 15 years of Broncos training camp, but it's also been
14
years of preseason watch list.
Yeah, and it's fun. And I think that the great feedback we get from everybody, and what's fun is because we record like 10 hours of shows for these, we deliver a lot of information, a lot of what we're seeing, but we also get to go off on all these extemporaneous tangents, and y'all are so kind. A lot of the best notes we get back are on the places where we end up. How did we get here? I don't even remember, but I know how we got here to this show in 2019. It's the support of the people. It's your lifeblood of the show, the chat room, everybody. We love you.
Love you much and appreciate each and every one of you for listening, for downloading this show, and checking out footballguys.com. We bring you the Audible for free, our free daily newsletter that Bloom and I and Joe Bryant write every single day. Check that out at footballguys.com. Check out our newswire at footballguys.com as well. Captain Tight Pants says, love football guys, Bloom, Cecil. So thank you, Captain Tight Pants, yourself. And thank you for listening, for watching here on our YouTube channel. Make sure in the chat room, we definitely love you, but definitely comment on the video and then like and share it. Like these all, and for whatever YouTube's algorithm is, this is how you grow the channel. So, and I've definitely seen just kind of on the back end, behind the scenes, Bloom, I've seen an increase when people do that, when you like and comment and share and all that. Like I've seen an increase in how it's recommended to people, how we get more viewership. So we definitely thank you guys for watching here on YouTube as well, listening on iTunes. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for the notes on Twitter. Follow the great Sigmund Bloom on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible. And I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.